Hey guys, hope all is going good. This is the start of Unit 5's PowerPoints that we would have began last week. So get ready to go through some absolutism. We're going to talk about Louis XIV and Peter the Great, old Fat Louis as I like to call him. But let's start off with this right here. Divine right. We've talked about this a little bit, but not a lot. But basically, the king is from God and the law is from the king. This is James the First of England. And if you think about it, what is he talking about here? The king is from God and the law is from the king. Basically, if God put this man on the throne, the way they believed, he felt like anything that come from him was straight from God. And that's divine right. Basically, God was the one that put him on the throne, and God's the only one that's going to take him off. So, let's talk about absolutism. Absolutism is basically the political belief that one ruler, one person, should have all the power within the boundaries of a country. Within the borders of a country, let's just say like England or France or Spain or Italy, or Austria, these kings held all power. Nobody shared their power with them. Now, this caused some issues, or the causes of this was you had religious and territorial conflicts that created fear and uncertainty. Remember all those wars that was created by the Protestant Reformation. Armies. They had to create armies to deal with these conflicts and to raise taxes to be able to pay the troops. And these heavy taxes, of course, led to unrest, peasant revolt. So you had to have one strong central ruler with all power to take control of everything. And so examples that we've talked about, Shi Huangdi, remember from China, he was an absolute ruler. Darius or Darius of Persia, the one that was scared to death of Alexander the Great, he was an absolute ruler. And mostly all the Roman Caesars. Octavian, Mr. Augustus himself was an absolute ruler. We know this because of the way he set up his government. Now, the two guys we're going to talk about in this unit, Mr. Louis, Fat Louis, Louis XIV of France, he is an absolute ruler. And then you've got Peter the Great of Russia, also an absolute ruler trying to get his country back on track. And so the effects of absolutism, you get rulers that are going to regulate religious worship and social gatherings to control the spread of ideas. So they're going to limit how many people would be together because they don't want people to come together and gather ideas against them or spread ideas against them in order to overthrow them. They increase the size of their courts, the people around them showing off how great and powerful they are. And then, of course, large governments, those bureaucracies to control their economies that for the most part, were going to be going in the crapper because of how much money they were spending to show how great they were. So, 6 reasons why these European monarchs gain power. Feudalism. Remember, feudalism starts to die and is almost dead by the time this comes around. Cities are taking place. They're growing. You're getting more trade now with the European exploration happening. More spices and things from the east are coming in. National kingdoms are becoming what we know today. Like England will become Great Britain. You've got France. You've got Spain. You still have the Italian city-states. You have Austria, Portugal, all becoming national kingdoms. The middle class. The middle class is starting to grow even more now, and by the time we get to the next unit, you're going to have this boom of the middle class, but it's slowly still growing. You've got these business owners that are wanting peaceful times, and so they back these monarchs in order to make sure business is good. Wealth from their colonies have paid for their ambitions, any little thing that they wanted. they were colonizing the world. And then you've got, of course, the church authority breaking down. Remember, at one point in time in the Middle Ages, the church was the most powerful thing across Europe. But now the kings are in their kingdoms, they are the most powerful. The church no longer has full authority over these kingdoms. All right, so first guy we're going to talk about is Mr. Louis. And there's this YouTube video. I'm going to try to post it to Google, the Google Classroom. But Louis is a great king. He does a lot for France. He puts them on the map when it comes to the way he runs the show in France. But he builds this palace that most of you have heard about, possibly when it comes to like the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I. But he is known for the one to have built this palace. And it's massive. But there's old Louis. Yeah, he's standing there with his wig and his tights and his heels. But he was setting the fashion trend. I know some of y'all are going to think that he may be a little on the funny side, but he actually had a lot of women folk, several illegitimate children, but he was setting the fashion trend all across Europe, and people looked to France as that staple, as that, who do we want to be like? And it was France. So here is a bird's eye view of the Palace of Versailles. It was massive. It was ginormous. Hundreds of acres of gardens, thousands of rooms, little chateaus off to the side. The gardens themselves were very intricate and detailed. It's still there today. How would you like to be a groundskeeper there? How would you like to be someone that did the landscaping there? Then you've got all these great works of art there. You got this guy that's coming out the ground made of gold. All these different little squares, some horses riding through some wood. There's gold everywhere around the palace. Here's some chateaus off to the side. This is another great view. Marble everywhere. This is the chapel, and you can just look at the paintings on the inside and the details that they have and all the gold. This is the famous Hall of Mirrors. You see the golden lampstands with the crystal, the large mirrors, and more paintings in the there. Going into the rooms, or the apartments as they called them. You can see the golden banisters. You can see the gold in the tapestries. Louis loved anything that was expensive. Then look at the size of the pictures here in these galleries. You can see the size of the men sitting on the bench compared to the size of the paintings. These are huge. Another bird's eye view of the Palace of Versailles. So Louis was, like I said, a great king, but he was very conceited. As you're going to read, hopefully sometime today or tomorrow in your readings, he liked everything to be about him. He gave himself the nickname the Sun King because he felt like, one, that he was the center of France's universe. Two, that he was their sun. He radiated power like the sun radiates heat. And so here are some quotes by Louis. He said that he is the state. It's legal because he wishes it. And in a book by a guy by the name of Voltaire, talking about the age of Louis, while Louis was king, basically, listen to this quote. Voltaire said, "It is dangerous to be right in matters on which the established authorities, meaning Louis, was wrong." Because basically, no matter what, Louis was never wrong. So, Mr. Louis was a Bourbon. He was from France, of course. Like I said, he gave himself the name Sun King. You're going to read how he's going to take power from the nobility because they threatened his life, and he made sure they never threatened him again. As a matter of fact, he had them come to his palace and live with him and wait on him hand and foot in order to show that he had power. They were there outside of his bed, ready to dress him. They bathed him, they brushed his teeth, they wiped his tail, they fed him everything. And think about how humiliating that would be, no matter how rich you were, but you're still wiping some old man's tail. I mean, you got to think about it, the humility, but Louis was showing them that he had the power to make them do anything. He spent a fortune to surround himself with all his luxuries, like the millions and millions of dollars that he spent on the Palace of Versailles. And all of that's going to cause France to go into extreme debt. He built up his army. It was the biggest, best army in Europe, but that comes at an expense. When you build your military up like that, you have to pay for it. And so it put them in debt through that. And he was a patron of the arts. As a matter of fact, he danced in a ballet that was named after him, the Sun King. Now, could you see old Louis in his heels and his tights? And he was not a small guy, of course, because you'll find out he likes to eat a lot as well. But dancing around in a ballet. But that's Louis. Louis loved everything about himself. He did love France, but as it was making him on the map. It was putting him on the map as it was making him look good. He was very conceited. But that's old fat Louis, Louis the 14th. And you're needing to know him because he's putting France in extreme debt. He's causing major issues for the citizens of France. And that's going to come up later with the French Revolution. So your assignments, you're going to need to don't worry about logging into Schoology. All of this is going to be on Google Classroom now, trying to help y'all out, streamline it. But you're going to go to Chapter 21, Section 2 of your textbook. I'm going to try to actually put those pages on Google Classroom. They should be there for you to already to read. Just read the pages, answer the questions, and turn it in for me on Google Classroom. Then this right here, Louis the 14th obituary, and you're still just going to use the information from the PowerPoint. You're going to use the information from the reading, and this right here outlines everything that I want. And what you're going to do is you're just going to, of course, download this to your Chromebook. You'll put little text boxes, for like the accomplishments of the Sun King. Give me his legacy. What's the positives of his reign? Why was he called the Sun King? What did he do for the arts, etc.? If you want to, copy and paste a picture in that little box there, in that little small area where it says explain absolutism, that's exactly what I want you to do. And how was Louis an example of it? Then give me 5 facts about old Louis. And then at the bottom, what were the negatives of his reign? What were some issues that he causes for France? Why were they in such great debt by the time he was dead? Okay, and then, of course, turn that in as well. And so this ends the first section of the Absolutism PowerPoint. I'm gonna come back to that. That's something that you're going to do at the end of this PowerPoint, of course, for your grade for today. Oh, Peter the Great. Peter the Great was from Russia. He was a part of the Romanov dynasty. He had great kings and queens before him, but his country is behind the times. Remember, last time we talked about the Mongols. They had ruled the Russian Empire for 200 plus years, and now Russia is behind Western Europe. Western Europe has excelled and advanced in science and math and technology and the arts, and so Russia is way behind. And so Peter wants to advance his country, and so Peter takes a trip. He goes to the west. He stops in several of the great cities in Europe, and he learns from several people, and he wants to make his country. And so he brings a lot of stuff back to Europe, or back to Russia, because of, as you can see there, at the top left, his people were suffering. He ends up going to change the church, and then, of course, because of the issue of the Mongol Empire. So, as you can see there on the left, this is the way people dressed in Russia. This was called a Cossack dress. They dressed like, basically they're wearing pajamas, it looked like to me, but it was just from the medieval period. They still had serfs and peasants in Russia at this point in time, when Western Europe had long gone forgotten about serfs and serfdom and feudalism. Now, you can see Peter there in the bottom picture. He is dressed like a Western European. He's learning from them, and he is going to bring all this stuff back from the West to Russia. And so his reforms, he comes back, he changes the Russian alphabet. He writes the first newspaper in Russia and starts circulating it. He changes the church. It's no longer going to be the Eastern Orthodox Church in Russia. It's going to be called the Russian Orthodox Church, and he gets rid of the patriarch, the head of the church there, and he makes himself the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. And then he needs a warm water port. What do we know about Russia? It's cold. It's always cold in Russia. And their ports that they have are sitting on the Arctic Ocean, and they're frozen over 9 months of the year. And so they can only get stuff out of those ports 3 months of the year. And so he fights a war with Sweden and gets a warm water port on the Baltic Ocean, or Baltic Sea, not ocean, sorry, and creates a new city, a new port. And he builds a new city there. It's going to be his new capital. It's called St. Petersburg. And he fashions the city after the cities of the West. Not only does he do that, he changes the clothing style for those in Russia. He makes them wear Western style clothing. Guys with beards have to shave their beards, or they have to pay a beard tax. And this is all under the umbrella of what is known as Westernization. He also brings potatoes. They had never had potatoes. Potatoes came from the New World, and Russia was so far behind the times they had never explored. They had never sent out people to explore or create colonies, and so he brought back potatoes, and potatoes just were just right for the Russians, because now they had a staple that they could live off of. Because what do Russians use potatoes for? To make their vodka. And of course, that's what good Russians always need. That's all they have to live off of mainly. And so, as you can see there, he did build St. Petersburg. He had that set up. Sorry guys, I had to stop and help my wife with something. But he had created St. Petersburg as his warm water port, his window looking in on Europe, able to hopefully jumpstart this Westernization in his country. Legacy, Russian Empire, Russia was... So, Peter the Great, Romanov from Russia, of course, built St. Petersburg, his warm water port. Like I said, he revised the Russian alphabet to be more Westernized. He Westernized Russia. His policy of Westernization changed Russia, he hoped, for the better. He wanted to improve trade with Western Europe. He knew that bringing in more money to be able to trade and things was going to help his country out. Russia would become more powerful under this. He would build extremely large military under this. Like I said, introduced potatoes. He changed the Eastern Orthodox Church to the Russian Orthodox Church, which would put him as the head of the church. And like I said, he started the first newspaper there for Russia. This is where I help you with your comparison and contrast discussion post, which will also be placed on Google Classroom. Remember to complete the questions, the Peter the Great questions, using the readings that I'm going to post on there, as well as this discussion post. And so this ends part 2 of the Absolutism PowerPoint.